If you've decided to renovate your home and you're like most people with zero renovation experience, then you're probably feeling worried. Because even though you have a chunk of money and want to renovate your home, it is so darn expensive. And you really don't know what your hard-earned savings will even get you. You're probably feeling unclear on the renovation process. What do you do first? Who do you call? You're overwhelmed by all the decisions you need to make, when you'll need to make them, and how to know if you're making the right decisions. Unsure where to source finishes, confused about if you need a permit and how to get one, maybe stressed about choosing the right contractor and making sure you don't get ripped off. But despite all of that, deep in your core, you're excited to dive into the weeds and pick the finishes that match the beautiful vision in your head for your perfect dream home that has everything you and your family need. I get it. There are so many unknowns and there's so much at stake. Renovations are more expensive now than they have ever been. And with house prices and inflation and crazy interest rates all being completely bonkers at the same time, it feels almost impossible to even contemplate a renovation. And yet we hear stories from friends and neighbors that are full of stress, last-minute decisions, frustration that things were done a certain way, and every single homeowner saying some version of, I wish I knew to think about this beforehand, or I wish I'd done this differently, or I wish I had taken more time to map this out. Feels impossible that we'd want to voluntarily go through this process. Yet, you know it's the right thing for you and your family, you know your home needs it, and you know it will improve your lifestyle. You just need the right guidance on how to get it done. It's at this point that most people make their first crucial mistake. They go right from deciding to renovate straight to the question, can you give me a quote? That's right, the first question is rarely about what strategy or which direction do I take. It's rather, who should I hire first? I can tell you that most people who want to renovate have at least some vague idea of what they want. So most go straight to a contractor for quotes and they try to figure out what they can afford and who is going to be their best option. But here are the problems with this approach. First of all, there's this myth that I see people believe all the time, that the world is full of contractors who are excellent at construction, project management, design, knowing every detail of the building code, communicating regularly with clients, patiently answering every question, anticipating your needs, noticing the fine details, providing quality craftsmanship, and as a lovely little cherry on top, doesn't charge a lot of money. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that person doesn't exist. There's nobody out there who is amazing at all of these completely different skill sets that are a combination of multiple disciplines of hard technical skills and soft personable skills, and who is reasonably priced. Because I'll tell you that it is possible to find someone with some combination of those skill sets, but if you can find them, then you must know that they offer more than most and are therefore very expensive. But this doesn't make us feel very good. Accepting this fact makes us feel uncertain about how to move forward with a renovation. What do you do first if you can't call a contractor? How do you move forward? You don't know anything about renovating. And as humans, as a general population, we cannot cope with uncertainty. Uncertainty in our brains feels like a genuine threat to our safety and security, as if a T-Rex was about to have us for lunch. For real. Uncertainty fires the same triggers and panic feelings that happen in our amygdala, which is the back part of our brain stem, which is responsible for keeping us alive through emotional responses like fear and anxiety. And even though there's absolutely no real threat, that's just how our brain works. And as a result, instead of accepting the rational truth about contractors and the uncertainty that comes with the decision to move forward with planning a renovation that they don't yet understand, most people would rather just put on their blinders, hire a contractor, and believe that he or she is some sort of special unicorn and that their renovation will somehow be different than everyone else's that ended up in disaster, lawsuits, disappointment, stress, budget blowouts, frustration, and regret. But only different actions can cause change. Just believing that something will be different the next time without making any changes to the inputs of the situation will not produce different outputs. But we believe it anyway because of how strong our need is to avoid uncertainty. We will force ourselves to believe a lie rather than mellow in the unknown. A certain risk is somehow better than uncertain safety. So people go directly to a contractor because they don't know what else to do, and it's what most people do, so we follow along. But the issue is that contractors are not project managers, and they aren't designers, and they aren't planners. Contractors are pros at the execution part, but what are they going to execute if you don't have a plan? You need to make sure this planning work is done before you call in a contractor. And you can do that on your own. You need to figure out what you're going to have done, how much it's going to cost, and what to remove from your scope if you can't afford it all. You need to finalize your perfect layout and consider the impacts of those changes on the rest of your home. You need to think through the updates you'll make to your structure, your HVAC, your electrical, and plumbing that will be required to accommodate your new layout and functionality. You need to choose the exact finishes you're going to have installed and decide how you want them implemented. And finally, you need to make sure that all your plans are documented by the right licensed professionals, that permits are approved, and that you have drawings and specifications that demonstrate exactly where and how everything's going to be installed. And let me tell you that most contractors don't do any of those tasks. Moreover, they won't even tell you that they won't do those things so that you're at least aware that they have to be done. No, they'll just be ambiguous the entire time. They'll let you wallow in your assumptions that they will just take care of everything at the right time while you just stress and stress over all of the unknowns that seem to never get clarified through the entire renovation. And you're hesitant to ask questions because the last time you did, you got yelled at, and you hear that you're supposed to trust your contractor. And somehow trust means you're not allowed to ask questions until one day people just show up at your home unexpectedly to do the work you didn't know was going to happen. And off your project goes, running away at full speed with you running after it in a heated, stressful, overwhelmed, panic sprint for the next 4 to 8 months. I hear the scoffs. You think I'm exaggerating. You think, no, that only happens to some people, not most people, and certainly not me. Well, if your reaction is to think that, then you have your blinders on too. You're the exact person who needs these lessons. So you know what? I'm really glad you're here. I also thought that this was other people's experience and it wouldn't be mine. I'm a project manager after all. This is what I do. I for sure thought I could manage some sort of easy reno project. And yet when it came to my turn, I didn't learn from these mistakes. I thought I would, so I did some planning in advance and had the answers ready to go in my brain. Then when it came to my laundry area installation, the simplest of projects, it was really small, I ended up with the upper and lower cabinets not lining up. Indeed, they were 2 inches off from one another. And while this is not a catastrophe, it still bugs me. And I was really baffled by how it happened. And when I look back on it, I had been expecting the contractor to ask me what I wanted and to show me plans with measurements and specifics. But it never happened. So I kept waiting like a good little client, not wanting to bother him with too many questions, figuring that, he was just waiting for the right time to confirm the plans. So I was very patient. And then in the span of one day, my lower cabinets were installed, holes were made for the plumbing was hooked up, and then holes were made for that big tall cabinet next to it, and that was all secured beside the sink cabinet, and it was realistically, by the end of the day, too late to tear it apart, all for 2 little inches that really didn't impact anything other than my own first personal disdain and frustration every time I walked past the whole laundry area. It was very unfortunate. And the saddest part of the story is that I didn't learn from it. Again, for real. The next spring, I had my shed built by a different contractor this time, and I did more planning. I figured out the specs for the shed. I even drew a little picture of it. I took measurements. I made sure we didn't need a permit for it, and I was clearer with what we wanted. So all was going to plan. They poured the concrete. The framing went up really quickly, and then a question came at me. When are the window and the door coming? When are the what? The wedding? Did he just suggest that I was responsible for ordering the window and door? He did. So not only were they not inside the project scope because he never sent me a contract, we just exchanged a few emails agreeing to a price, which I clearly thought included everything when it didn't. And also, I didn't know that I was responsible for choosing and sourcing them. Okay, so I took a few days, I researched like crazy, ordered the things, had to wait a few weeks, but they got installed. So then we could finish the exterior of the shed. And what question did I get asked next? What color siding did we want? Of course the one we wanted was back ordered for 4 weeks. So our simple shed took 4 months in total from start to finish. He could have asked us what we wanted on day 1, but he didn't. And I didn't think to go to him and prompt him to ask us all these decisions up front because I assumed yet again that he would take control. So look, I'm not trying to condemn all contractors here. Overall, we're reasonably happy with the end results, but the process was underwhelming. 4 months for a shed. Imagine if this was a more complex project like a kitchen or an entire floor remodel. It would have been an epic disaster. This is how easily it happens. You think you're on top of it, but unless you know everything to ask and exactly what to do, stuff will get missed. And look, red hot shame still shoots through my body when I tell this story. How could I have let this happen twice? And it's because of these two very hard to hear truths about renovations. So first, most contractors are not project managers. They weren't trained to manage projects. And if they were trained at all, it would be informally. It was just to build stuff. And number two, starting renovation without a project management style plan will end up in problems, frustration, regret, extra budget, and time delays. It's inevitable. Fail to plan to fail. This is not news. Okay, so what can you do about it? You can and should fully plan your own renovation on your own before you call a contractor. That's the answer. It's the single solution that will make renovating your dream home affordable and achievable for you. It's a way for you to not have to worry about the fact that your contractor isn't a project manager or even involve an expensive interior designer or design build company, because you won't need them. Now, I'm still going to talk about those options next, so bear with me here. But before we do, it's essential that you know that if you want to save the most amount of money in your renovation, if you want the single most strategic and affordable path to enjoying your dream home forever, the best approach is to do all the planning yourself, and then you hire the contractor or trades at the end of the planning phase once you've already figured out what you want and who the right people are for your unique project. So I've shown you the first reason why you don't call a contractor first. They don't have the skill set for planning and designing your reno. They are just the execution part of the project only. The contractor should not be your guide for the whole process. And here is the other reason why you should never call a contractor first. They can't actually give you a quote with any meaning. In fact, nobody can provide a quote or pricing for a project that hasn't been defined. Let that one soak in. How can a contractor, or anyone, including an architect or a tradesperson, provide accurate pricing for a project or components of a project without specifications? You can't do it. No, I mean, sure, a contractor knows the price of building materials and has fees associated with their labor time, but beyond those things, they need to know your final layout, what finishes you've chosen, where your plumbing's going, what pot lights you're installing, how thick your countertop will be, etc., 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 in order to give you an accurate price. Of course, they can give you a ballpark. They'll say it's 100 to 300,000 and 3 to 10 months. But is that helpful to you at all? That tells you nothing that you don't already know. I could tell you that much without even speaking to you. Until there's a fully fleshed out plan that includes a detailed scope, which means what will be done in the project, it's actually impossible to know the costs or timing. And this is so key. In order to have an accurate fixed price, you must know every detail of what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. But when you first decide to renovate and you pick up the phone to call them, do you have that information? Of course not. So to combat this, contractors write in allowances into their quote, which says that you can spend up to X dollars per square foot for flooring and up to X dollars per square foot for countertops. Does that help define the scope? No, because what does that pricing mean to you? You don't know what flooring you want yet. So you don't know if the $5 per square foot flooring you get will be like a nice wide plank engineered white oak flooring that you want in the future, or is it not? Is it some sort of really cheap tile? You don't know yet because you haven't done the research or gone shopping. It's all without context. And so then here's what happens when you get these allowances. Later in the project, when you're told that your flooring needs to be on site in 24 hours, you panic and you run to a flooring store where you learn that the floors you really love are actually $13 a square foot. On a 2,000 square foot home, which is pretty big but not crazy, that's a $16,000 cost overage, probably plus tax, that you'll have to pay out of pocket to get the floors that you love. And in that hour or so that you have to make the decision, you'll either spend the $16,000 over and above your useless allowance and feel gutted and sick inside about how much extra you're spending, or you'll just abandon your dream result and start looking at cheaper options, feeling gutted and sick about spending so freaking much money on this renovation and still not getting the finishes that you really want. It's horrific either way. And flooring is only one decision out of many really big important ones, like your cabinetry, your countertops, your backsplash, your hardware, your lighting, appliances, built-in stairs, and fireplace. And even more decisions related to your SHEP components, which is my little acronym for structure, HVAC, electrical, and plumbing. These are never discussed in detail up front, and yet they contribute to so much of your home's functionality and usability. When you make these so-called changes to these areas mid-project, even though something can't be a change if it didn't have a baseline plan to begin with, imagine how expensive it is because it's materials plus tradesperson labor time, which is expensive because they're the pros and they can charge a lot of money. Is this starting to make sense? Are you seeing why I get so worked up about this? And I haven't even asked you what you think happens if you actually pick a finish that is less than the allowance amount. Do you think you get that money back? So any quote you get from a contractor without a detailed plan is essentially garbage because they're guessing at what you want. And you don't know what you want, so you can't correct them. So you're promising money to a person without any real idea of what you're getting for that money. It's kind of scary, right? It's a risky game, which is why it doesn't usually end well. And that's why when you call up a contractor at this stage, I can almost guarantee that their first question is not, do you know what you want? It's, what's your budget? Because they will always take your money and write up a contract full of assumptions and allowances that get them out of any real obligation to stick to that budget. It's just a huge lie. And it's shocking, really, that they get away with it. And so I say all this with frustration because I feel that, but most contractors are not doing this maliciously. They don't have another option. They can't say, well, how about I spend my time helping you plan it first for free so that, we can have an accurate scope to quote. They would be out of business very quickly if they did that. And asking you to pay for that time would have you laughing at them because it would probably add 20 to 50% to the overall project cost. And since you don't just have more dollars endlessly growing ready to pick off the money tree in your backyard, that extra amount would need to come out of your existing budget. And that means you'll get even less in your final result. So instead, they just build in allowances and take your money and watch you limp along with your decisions and get to an end result that's just mediocre. This is why people end up with better than before and it's okay when you talk about, your renovation results. It would be like walking into a car dealership and spending all your money on a car and all it says is the contract is, well, it'll have some wheels and, you can drive it. It'll have some heating and AC and, a bit of storage. The car industry isn't like that at all, of course, because you know exactly what specifications you're getting when you sign the contract. So there's no extra fees that come up when it's being manufactured, and there's no disappointment when it gets delivered. We need to bring in more of that car industry standard into the home renovation industry. And enabling homeowners to plan their own renovations following a project management framework is the key to unlocking this.